So please lie on your back, have your legs long. Bring your arms out to the side at shoulder height. So you might need to do a little negotiation with the person nearby and move a little up or down your mat so that you each have a little bit of space. Let your hands be just softly in fists. And could you begin to roll your arms so that your fists turn headwards? I think thinking about the idea of axes that we've already talked quite a lot about, can you keep a sort of a straight line through your arms, through your hands, so that your fists are just gently rotating around that line? Your arms lie quietly on the floor. Notice how far your arms easily turn. Is it something that you can do without interfering with anything else that you're doing, like breathing? And then see what it's like to roll your fists downwards via the forwards direction. Is that more or less easy than rolling upwards? And like many of the movements that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks, this is not about achieving anything in particular. It's about exploring the patterns that we carry within us, the little habits we have that we didn't even know were habits. And a few times take your fists a bit upwards, a bit downwards. Sorry, roll your fists a little upwards and downwards. Leave your arms where they are. And notice where are you able to move within that range where the quality stays easy and smooth. And then leave that. Would you bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor? And could you begin to rock your pelvis in such a way that your tailbone comes away from the floor and back down again? So your pelvis stays resting on the floor, but it's just rocking to change the distance between the tip of your tail and the ground underneath it. And can you expand the roll so that your pelvis takes your tailbone a little closer to the floor? Notice how you do that. Where does that movement happen and how does it happen? And can you engage in a little bit of experimenting with the position of your feet? Is it easier to roll your pelvis back and forth if your feet are closer together or further apart? You could experiment with how close your feet are to the rest of your body. If you have your heels right up touching your bum, does that make it easy? Does it lock things up a bit? If you have your feet further away, what effect does the position of your feet have on finding an easy axis of rotation for your pelvis to roll back and forth? When you've found the optimal place for your feet, it seems to make sense in your experience, continue rolling your pelvis a little bit and notice what pathway does it take. We had some kind of fancy analytical machine that put dots on you and tracked them through space. Does your pelvis roll directly on the headwards, footwards line, or does it head off a little bit to one side? Does it kind of aim a little bit for one foot or the other, or one shoulder or the other? Do you have a sense of where your hip joints are? If your pelvis is rolling back and forth, the place that allows that movement to occur is the hip joints, those big, almost spherical ball joints. And so as your pelvis is rolling, does one hip joint become higher than the other at any point in the trajectory? Or do you have the sense that they stay pretty much the same distance from the ground? And you could check as your coccyx comes closer to the floor and as it comes further away from the floor. How symmetrical does that movement feel to you? And if you track what it is that's causing the pelvis to move, is it pressing with your feet? Is it something you do in your back or your belly? There's probably a sense of at least changing pressure on your feet. And so does that feel symmetrical? Does it feel as though each foot has the same impact on the movement of the pelvis? And you might remember yesterday or the day before, Zoran showing you the shape of the hip joints, the shape of the pelvis, how your leg kind of comes up and around the corner into its little cave. You have a sense on you or in your visual memory of the spacing between those two caves. Does this movement give you a sense of how deep those hip joints actually sit? And maybe you could even explore that a bit more. Just press a little bit with your left foot a few times. Feel the effect of the left foot moving your pelvis back and forth. Can you feel deep down where that movement actually occurs? And then try with the right foot. And maybe you could alternate a bit, press with the left foot, the right foot, and feel that kind of diagonal rocking movement that creates in your pelvis. If you have an image of your pelvis or the pelvis on the skeleton out in the room, or as Moshe calls them, our friend that has no intelligence and no skin. Can you sense the big back of the bowl on one side coming closer to the floor, and then the other big wing back of the bowl coming down on the other side? And of course, the pelvis doesn't move by itself. It's connected to your spine. And the spine connects to your chest. So as you tilt your pelvis back, different angles, and you track that movement through your spine and your ribs, and notice what effect that has on the shape of the rest of your torso. And of course, inside your chest, there's breathing. So has the movement fallen into a rhythm with your breath, or are they both happening in their own independent timing? Does one hip go up as you breathe in and down as you breathe out? Was there a different pattern that you have? And a few times press with both feet simultaneously. And see, has that had any effect on the trajectory of your pelvis now? And then maybe let your concentration disengage, rest your brain, rest your body. And maybe just notice what echoes are still wandering through your system. And bend your knees again. This time put your feet close together so that your ankles touch and your knees touch. Notice if that feels familiar or awkward or elegant. And press with your feet, roll your pelvis, and notice what happens to the movement when you have your feet that close together. How does it change? Does it make the movement smaller? Then bring your feet a bit further apart. Try the pressing with both feet. And can you sense what's changed? And maybe you had some similar sensations when you were playing with the spinning and turning. That when the base of support becomes smaller, more of us needs to be engaged in keeping our balance. So when your feet were very close together, did it feel as though you had the brakes on? And when your feet come apart, there's a little more space. Everything can turn a bit more freely. And so once again, just explore a little bit, where do your feet need to be now for optimal ease of movement? There'll be many occasions where we explore and discover the importance of what the pelvis is doing in terms of making movement easier or more efficient. Feldenkrais says, when we know what the pelvis does, we can improve almost every act that we do. It's a very, very central, important part of most of our movements. So just rocking your pelvis the smallest amount that you possibly can. Can you track that through your system now? What happens in your spine? How's that connecting through to your head? Is there a connection or relationship between your head and your pelvis? We talked earlier about the floor giving us feedback. Can you feel a little bit of movement between your head and the floor as your pelvis rolls? And let the rocking fade away and bring your arms out to the side again. Sort of like to leave your knees bent for the moment, but have your arms out to the side again, your loose fists, and see what it's like to roll your arms around themselves so that your fists go upwards, headwards, and back. Has anything changed? Feldenkrais suggests that we might like to make this movement more human. And by that he means integrating more of ourselves into the movement. So what's all that stuff with rocking the pelvis got to do with it? Could there be a connection? If your pelvis is connected to your spine and your ribs and your neck and your head, your arms join into that pattern as well. So if you were to gently press a little with your feet, could you find a connection that made it easier for your arms to roll? Start with just a little rock of your pelvis, a little push of your feet. Gradually increase each time. Check that you're only concentrating so much as to allow your breath to flow freely. Gradually amplifying the push with your feet, the roll and tilt of your pelvis. Maybe you get a sense that there's something starting to soften a little bit in your chest and your ribs. That somehow makes it easier for your arms to turn a bit further. And you might find you could amplify that movement even further so that your pelvis starts to lift right away from the ground. You could maybe have the sense that as your pelvis lifts, you pour yourself into the rolling of your arms. And is there some way that your breathing can also assist that sense of everything contributing to the turning of the arms? And maybe you have a sense that as you press and lift, roll, pour, that your knees separate a little bit. And so as you expand the movement, do you need to also just check, where are my feet? Are they really supporting this movement? Or do I have to work to hold myself in a way that interferes with the movement? So just experiment a little bit. Do your feet need to come closer to you, further away from you, a little bit in, a little bit out? Really finding the relationship between your feet, your pelvis, breath, and the rolling of your arms. Let it go, have a rest. often talk in the Feldenkrais work about being interested in improving functions, about not just doing exercise for the sake of exercise or for strengthening or loosening or stretching different bits, but of being able to perform something in the world more efficiently or more satisfyingly. Do you have any sense of what function this might improve? Ooh. Then you can let that question go to the background and bend your knees, bring your arms out to the side again. At this point, when Feldenkrais gave the lesson in the Amherst training, he started to go into a bit of a rant and a bit of a gallop around the room, because he was really clear that the position of your feet has a profound effect on how available your pelvis is going to be to move or how constrained it's going to be. And so he wanted to be sure that people could sense the difference between having their lower legs vertical, that is your feet, your heels underneath your knees, so that your legs are in a vertical plane. Okay, so you can imagine Zoran wandering around with his stick, holding it beside your leg. In your mind's eye or in your sensory eye, can you compare the sensation you have in your ankles and your knees and your hips? Can you press with your feet and try having your feet a bit closer, a bit further away, bit in and bit out? Where would you have that sense of maximum support, maximum alignment with the stick? Or if the stick was a sheet of ply and it sat beside your legs. Try turning your toes a little bit outwards. Press with your feet, lift your pelvis. Notice, does that make it easier or more difficult? Does it help you to roll your hands? Try turning your toes inwards. Turn them both to the same side. And although Feldenkrais wandered around the room and sat on people's knees to demonstrate how strong a vertical leg can be, I won't do that. But maybe you could imagine that I did. What effect would that have? Would it feel as though it was about to crush your ankle? Would it feel as though that weight could be clearly transmitted through to the ground and you could go on lifting and lowering your pelvis uninterrupted? Or would your foot shoot out in front of you? Well, you remember the other day, the lesson I gave last week you were looking for that place where you could park your leg and it would stay there for a long time. The minimum effort to hold it. Yes, you've got muscles that bring your knees together. You've got muscles that take your knees apart. We're looking for the place where they're in equipoise. I think if I put, whoops, didn't drop your leg. I think if I put the stick beside your leg, yeah. Yep. Well, we want your leg to stay in a place where it can support your weight. So remember Zoran talked about the 3 triangles sitting on top of each other. That's a very unstable organisation. It's going to take at least a little bit of something to keep things stacked up. So if you turn off everything, there's a fair chance that your leg's going to fall out because it's a ball joint, a nice, well-lubricated ball joint now. It's nice and slippery, and if it's not precisely balanced over the vertical, it will fall down. What we do want to know is that the muscles on either side, the ones that either hold it up or hold it apart, are balanced, softly balanced, with the minimum engagement that they could have just to keep your leg there. So let it go, bring your legs down. And just rest for a moment. And bring your arms out to the side. Roll your fists around the axis of your arm. And notice, do they go further now than they did when you began? Has anything changed in your capacity to involve more of yourself without deliberately having to lift your pelvis and press with your feet? Has your intelligent body-mind learnt something that it's able to take and keep? And what about if you roll your hands the other way, roll them forwards and downwards? Has that changed also? I think for some of you it has. So bend your knees again, stand your feet. See if you can find that place of support that takes the minimum of engagement for your legs to rest there. Roll your arms upwards Leave them there. Let your legs come down. Can you gently bring them back to their neutral place and go back to where you are now? Now has something changed? And then roll your arms downwards a few times. Bend your knees. And could you find a connection between your feet and your pelvis and your head and your arms that make it easier for your arms to roll forwards? And then if you let your feet begin to press and lift your pelvis as you roll your arms up. You know that movement quite well now. And then as your arms come back again, roll forwards and down, could you let your head lift a little bit? And then as your arms roll up, you press with your feet. Just check again, are your feet in the optimal place? And leave it, let everything come along. Just in your imagination, could you conceive of that movement of the rolling of your hands around the axis of your arms be lighter and easier in a way that didn't necessarily involve pressing with your feet or lifting your head? And then leaving your legs long, leaving your head on the floor. Bring your arms out to the side, roll them a little bit upwards and downwards. How can you be involved in the rolling of your arms so that it's light and easy? And you leave your legs and your head on the floor and roll them to the same degree that you could when you were lifting your pelvis and your head. can you make the movement light and easy? Bend your knees again. Let your pelvis and your head join in the movement again, but maybe they don't need to lift quite as high as they did to really get a clear sense of this movement flowing through the whole of your body. And do you have a sense that there's a timing involved in this? Can each part of you be listening for the signal from the previous part that now it's time to join in, that I'm going to pass the movement from you to the next one, to the next bit, so that your pelvis knows when to go up and down, your head knows when to go up and down. And then bring your pelvis high up into the air. And take your feet a little bit further away. See what effect that has. Does that make it easier to hold your pelvis up or harder? Bring your feet closer in. And walk them back and forth a little bit till you find that place of absolutely minimum effort. And then just once or twice, let the movement flow from your feet into your pelvis, let it lift, pour the movement up into your shoulders and your arms, your head, and then your head lifts and pours it all the way back again. And leave it, let it all go. Christ finished the lesson with another little rant about the importance of really learning to drive our own systems efficiently. Even back in 1980, he was saying that people are building robots that can do that pretty well. Pretty soon, people will be building robots that can do all the things that we can do. And eventually it'll become cheaper and more efficient for the robots to run us than for us to run them. So if we don't want to be taken over by robots, we have to make sure that we can do things better than they can. So when you're ready, roll yourself over, find your way up to standing. Just notice the connection now between your feet and your pelvis and your head. There's even a sense that connects into your shoulders and your arms as well. Take them for a walk around the room for a moment or two. Just notice what effect that's had. And then if you haven't remembered to take the coloured pens and put an X on the board at the back, remember the red X is your first preference and the black X is your second preference. For the times when we get together for about an hour once a month for the next 3 months. And also, as we kind of come to the latter part of our final first week together, some of you expressed the desire to be here for this segment as a kind of a taster to help you make up your mind whether you're going to continue on this extraordinary journey. If you're one of those thinking people, maybe you'd like to chat with me in the next day or two about how your thinking's going and what decision you're moving towards. Travel home safely, have an incredibly good night's sleep, and come bounding back refreshed and energised in the morning.